Hey up viewers and viewers, my name is John Red Strategist and welcome back to Say Being Hunted. 588 is the number of the episode that we are up to. So, we completed just a default playthrough of the previous map in the previous episode, so that's good, we've done that. Now, I did mention there that I was going to go into an actual challenge for this next one. So you see, I'm starting as the officer class here, folks, which probably immediately tells you that this is probably going to be a robot slaying challenge, which you are indeed correct. Now, we've done something actually like this before. Do you remember when I did, I think it was like my castle, was it like my tower sniper challenge, where I was using castle towers and I had to sort of snipe robots to score points and get as many points as I could in a certain amount of time? Well, basically it was sort of doing a similar thing to that, except this time I'm going to call it the Castle Defence Challenge. So, what we have to do is, we have to pick a castle. I basically set this island to be a castle biome, with slightly increased structure spawn rates and things like that. We're going to have 1 hour to basically kill as many robots as possible and score points. Point system is as follows: Hunters 1, Hounds 2, Squires 3, Poachers 4, Scarecrows 5 and Riders 10. So, without further ado, I'm just going to set my stopwatch. Right, 1 hour. It's already started. We're going. Challenge on the way. Now, as I said in the previous episode, the thing is, as of when I record this, it's August, and probably in the coming days, I will be probably travelling back up to the north of England to visit friends and family, so I need to record a lot of content just to put it in the queue on the channel, so that way, you know, we're not missing, we're not lacking content, and my queue doesn't end up running out. So I'm hoping to record quite a bit of my base series, so Sir, Metro 2033, RTCW, and as well as that, maybe also record a ton of bonus content as well that can always be used by way of basically, well, just as like bonus stuff essentially that I could be potentially bringing out on the channel to plug any gaps, anything like that, or just as, you know, maybe secondary uploads from day to day or whatever. So I'm going to be doing that, and hence why I'm recording a fair bit of Sir today. So of course, because this is a challenge and it's 1 hour, what I will be doing is basically recording the whole challenge in one go. I won't be doing proper outros until I get to the very end. And what that, of course, that means is I'll take the footage and I'll split it down into more than one episode. So, depending on how I feel, I'll split it either into 3 episodes or 4. Maybe like... Oi. So I'm thinking either we'll split it into 3 episodes of 20 minutes-ish each, or maybe 4 episodes of about 15 minutes each. I may do actually 4 episodes of 15 minutes or so each, just because that might give me a bit more scope. It might mean I can fill up the, well, pad out the old schedule a bit more. For fuck's sake, there's so many of you around here. Can you go into Iron Slice, please? That'd be very helpful. Go to you. Right, hold on. We're at a stage in the game so far where, luckily, the hunters are not shooting very accurately, which is fortunate. And hopefully, well, I was about to say hopefully they drop some ammo. A shotgun maybe would be very nice. Okay, you got one. I don't want to be using up all my ammo just killing hunters and all that. Yeah, there we go, he's got one, that's good. So yeah, I'm going to use an axe? Sure. We'll use a trap as well, actually. Traps can also be useful for defending whatever castle we decide to try and protect. But yeah, like I say, what I'm really sort of hoping to do is just get a load of stuff recorded before I travel away to go and visit friends and family, because obviously once I've travelled away, that means during the time that I'm up there visiting them, I'm not going to be able to do any recordings. So, the more content I can get recorded right now, the better, ladies and gentlemen. Basically the same thing I always do, every year, whenever I'm about to go and visit people. Nothing new about that then, ladies and gents. So yeah, like I say, I'm actually gravitating towards the idea now of maybe splitting this into 4 episodes, because that just means it'll fill up the Surrey Being Hunted schedule for quite some time, a good few weeks, well, a week or 2 at the very least, I would have thought. So yeah, actually I'll do that. I'll do that, ladies and gentlemen, and that should hopefully be fine. Right, I'm just trying to think of the other villages around that I could go and raid for anything else. Now, in terms of the robot spawn rates, actually for this challenge, I have tweaked them a bit. So at the moment we just got hunters spawning at the usual default rate, but then once we get to about the 20-minute mark, the rest of the robots will start to spawn. And then once we reach about the sort of 40-45-minute mark, the spawn rates will increase a little further. So I've sort of staggered it, basically, to make it sort of more manageable. So obviously I'm not counting the hunters that I just killed a moment ago. They're not counting as part of the score, because of course I didn't kill them in a castle. So basically that's the rule. I have to kill enemies within the grounds of a castle, because it's castle defence and all that. Oh, watch out for that guy. Just going to go over here. You guys got anything around here? Any goodies? Ah, there we go. There's more ammo, thank God. That hunter is just hanging around, isn't he? He's being a bitch. That's what he's being. Alright, let me go around this way like this. Okay, so as we count down towards the 5-minute mark, not of the challenge that is, because the first 5 minutes of the challenge are nearly up. Can you get closer? Alright, you're just going to go over there, are you? That's fine. You do that then, bud. You do that indeed. Yeah, right. This is not actually a castle, it's just a set of towers, isn't it? That's kind of unfortunate. If I had a torch, that would actually be quite helpful. Well, there's a castle off over here. Maybe we could lure some robots out and get an initial score. Right. Now, in the meantime, actually, as I want to record this, I was just thinking about the previous episode and what I've been talking about. Because obviously I'd been talking about castles of the UK and all that. Actually, let's use the balloon to see if we can lure anyone out, because there might still be some robots in the immediate area. We do this. You might pull some people over. Pull some victims over, bud. Or not. Don't do that at all. Right, let's just sit up here for a while, see if anyone shows up. There's a gift shop over there we can always go to, if need be, assuming that's not the gift shop I was actually at before. It might be. Or is it that one, actually? Hang on. I think they're a bit different. No, as I was saying, at the end of the last episode, I actually mentioned some of my reading, you know, my literature that I've been reading a few months ago. I mentioned Wilkie Collins, The Moonstone, as a story that I had been, well, a book rather, that I had been reading. And, I mean, okay, this might be the same gift shop I was just at, because there's a freaking thing over there, bollocks. I got it confused. Yeah, so reading Wilkie Collins' The Moonstone, which is sort of like a detective book, detective story about a precious gem recovered from India that goes missing. It's set at the time it was written, so probably about like late 18th, early 19th century, around about there. It's all like English high society and all that, and yeah, it was alright. It's the first Wilkie Collins book, though, that I've actually ever read, because I don't think I've ever read any of Wilkie Collins' stuff before, at least not to the best of my knowledge anyway. So it was good to have a look at that, see what that was all about. So yeah, it was alright. It was okay for what it was. But yes, I also mentioned obviously Charles Dickens, who I think I have talked about Charles Dickens books before here on the Being Hunted series, but I don't think have I ever talked about Hard Times? Because I mentioned Hard Times at the end of the last episode, but didn't really go into it in any sort of great detail. Because I think I've talked about other books I've read of Charles Dickens before, like Great Expectations, Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, etc. But I don't think I've ever talked about Hard Times. And the thing is, like, you know, in classic sort of Dickensian fashion, you know, Hard Times is very much Dickens kind of satirising and sort of doing his own kind of expose on things that were wrong with Victorian society as he saw them. In this case, Hard Times is about sort of the education system, about how schools basically stifle creativity and imagination. Because the whole idea is that Thomas Gradgrind is this sort of big believer that for kids to be successful in life, you should fill their heads with nothing but facts. Facts alone. There is no room for fancy or imagination or anything like that. And it's funny, really, when you read that, because, you know, history is one of those things which, you know, historical events and things that happen today, you know, we look back on things that happened in the past, and often we try to sort of draw parallels between the two. And, you know, truth is that history never sort of rhymes perfectly, but it does sometimes echo in a very sort of eerily similar way to things that went on before, if that makes sense. And, you know, when you read Hard Times, sometimes you might get that feeling, because, of course, you know, there's a lot of people out there who look at our education systems in places like the US, sometimes in the UK as well, and elsewhere, and they think, you know, school is sometimes the best thing for stamping out creativity and imagination. It really is. Especially if you have teachers who are not very imaginative and who basically just, their idea and approach to teaching just seems to be, I'm going to read out a load of material and you just take notes. Or, you know, I'm just going to say, here's how you do things and you just memorise it. Things like that. And so, God, yeah, it's like eerie sort of reading Hard Times with Thomas Gradgrind and his approach to his own educational philosophy. And then thinking about those kind of debates today about the education system and what it's doing wrong and things like that. But yeah, as you can imagine, the whole story of Hard Times basically is that Thomas Gradgrind, you know, emphasises and insists on his approach to education, but then of course his views later on in the story get completely challenged when his own kids, his own children, as they grow up, basically go off the rails. So like his son gets involved in crime, his daughter ends up in a loveless, unhappy marriage, and things like this. And so, of course, eventually his whole just worldview is completely challenged. It's a decent book. It's not my favourite of Dickens, but I did like it on the whole. I'd say probably my favourite Dickens book would be, I don't know, I think probably, I don't know, I like Great Expectations. That was a real good one. Quite a big, solid, long book, that one. But, I mean, then again, a lot of Dickenses are always quite long, to be honest. Nothing really unique about them in that regard. So, you know, they're always worth a read, essentially. But, you know, Great Expectations, of course, is about Pip, Philip Pirrip, who encounters a convict on the marshes in the east of England during his youth, and then in an act of kindness that he shows to this man later when he gets older, he then discovers that an anonymous benefactor has left him a load of money to make him a gentleman, essentially, is the story. And of course later on he finds out who that anonymous benefactor actually is, and then there's like a whole sort of intrigue going on around his benefactor, around a strange woman, Miss Havisham, things like this. If you're into Victorian English literature, you've got to read Dickens, right? He's the big one. An author actually who my mother absolutely loves, and who sometimes has said, you know, you should probably check out sometime, Andrew, is Anthony Trollope, because apparently a lot of his sort of touch on the politics of the era. And when I say politics, I mean things like parliamentary workings, things like that. So he might be an interesting one to get my teeth into as well. You never know. I'll have to see how I feel and all that. Down bottom. Here we are. Right, go in here. Have I ever talked before about how in Surrey Being Hunted the village names are always just so on point? So utterly akin to actual real village names in the UK. Probably have. I probably did like years and years ago when I first ever started playing this game. Right, I don't need to be stocking up on this much food. What am I doing? Is that a tower that I can climb up, do you reckon? Possibly. But yeah, down bottom, I can certainly think of a town that I know of which has the word bottom in its title, and I remember as a kid always getting a right giggle out of it. Basically, in sort of, I can't remember if it's actually in Lancashire or if it's technically in the Greater Manchester County, but there's a town called Ramsbottom, and as you can imagine, driving through it on like family trips to go and see relatives in sort of the Greater Manchester area, you know, when I was a kid, me and my sibling, we would always, without fail, just have a right giggle about the name of this town. Ooh, why's it called Ramsbottom, ladies and gents? But to be honest, you know, that's not the worst name. That's not the worst place name in England. There are far, far worse and more embarrassing than that. None of which I can actually name off the top of my head, but I know they exist, because I've heard people talk about them before. You know, little frigging Cockwomble. It probably is the sort of names that we're thinking here. That's not actually a town, I've just made that up, but there are places. Actually, come to think of it, there is one down south that I visited since I moved down here. A little village, and it's called Little Coxwell. Now, it's spelt, of course, C-O-X-W-E-L-L. But, of course, the way you pronounce that It sounds more like cock swell. Which, of course, might just be taken as a bit of an innuendo, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, keep moving, please. There's ice there. Got him. Right, let's get some cards there so we can get across to where that gold tooth is. That's good. Past the effects, causing lag, of course. So yeah, like I said, let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments, everybody. Because that's the thing about this game, Alice. In many ways, kind of like my So You're Being Hunted series, these Alice episodes, because, you know, they typically tend to be quite long, and the gameplay is, you know, fairly repetitive at times, with a lot of platforming, solving puzzles, things like that. It's nice to have a bit of a conversation, and, you know, turn these episodes almost into kind of like a podcast sort of style, so to speak. So yeah, good stuff. Okay, right, a little bit of a checkpoint here, so what's the deal?